Communications and Media for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. We'll talk about this deal and where the minerals are located and all that in a moment. But first, I just want to get your thoughts on the dynamic between these two. I mean, this was a big week for President Trump meeting with the French president and the British prime minister. And now we've got President Zelenskyy and this war of words. What do you make of all of this going into the meeting?
Let's just make it a big week, because every week is a big week for President Zelenskyy. The unprecedented number of rocket attacks, especially on Sumy over Kyiv, Odessa, just in the last 24 hours. Another reported over 20 children, I believe close to 40 children, reported as being forcibly transferred across the border to be re-educated as Russian citizens. Every week is a tough week for President Zelenskyy as well. And what you're going to see today is slightly different from President Trump's meeting with Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, both of which very stealthily touched on the fact that what President Trump isn't true, maybe not that stealthily, but I don't think that President Zelenskyy is interested in doing a public rebuke of President Trump. We've seen that they are hard-nosed, the Ukrainian delegation, hard-nosed in their confrontations or negotiations with President Trump behind closed doors, but not in public. They're not interested in embarrassing him in public, so he'll probably wave off any response to a question about dictators, etc., and talk about what's really important, and that's getting this deal signed.
And Russia in all of this. President Trump was asked on Thursday if he could trust Putin, and he said that he thought the Russian leader would keep his word, but he said trust and verify. What has President Zelenskyy said about the meetings so far between the U.S. and Russia going into today?
They're concentrating on their negotiations. They're trying to keep up on what the developments are out of, we obviously had the meeting in Turkey, following up on the meeting in Saudi Arabia with the Russian government. Oddly, it seems to be about increasing staffing at embassies, which is, as we know, and as many national security experts have told us, will be about increasing the number of Russian spies on the United States territory. But as far as how that affects Ukraine is going to be concentrating on making this deal because it's a good deal for both countries. And again, you're not going to see President Zelenskyy go out and try to publicly embarrass President Trump in the same way that President Putin has been doing the entire week. Every day that President Trump makes a statement that that Russia is okay with having peacekeepers. I talked to Putin about it. Russia is okay about giving away some territory. I talked to Putin about it. Russia comes out and publicly puts out statement in print, but with a spokesperson saying none of this is true. We're going ahead with the war.
Speaking of the minerals deal, is much of the area that they're talking about in occupied Russian territory of Ukraine right now? How will this work?
It's going to work because of American ingenuity. So the United States has known about vast deposits of all kinds in Ukraine since the mid-2000s, when the U.S. Geological Survey actually did a project and surveyed Ukraine to find out, first and foremost back then, where Ukraine's shale deposits were, where different resources they hadn't yet been utilizing were, and how Ukraine can modernize its industrial base. These rare earth minerals weren't really being developed back then as much because it's a laborious process, and only a few countries have the technology to really get it out of the ground quickly and in a more economical manner, and that's the United States first and foremost. So getting them out of Ukraine will be great for the United States for two reasons. One, America has the technology to do it. That's why it wasn't being done before, because United States companies weren't willing to invest in Ukraine to get it out of the ground. But second of all, the enemy state, as you mentioned, occupying a lot of that territory under which there are these resources, the enemy has ended up leveling the ground and depopulating it, which is very important because, as you may know, getting rare earth minerals out is not a clean process. You don't want to do that in a populated zone. So here we have a depopulated area because the enemy attacked. A lot of buildings have been taken down. More quickly can a company come in and build their own facilities over such a area. And then I think the most interesting part is, as you show the map, if we're talking about the occupied territories and we want to get that to the United States, you're talking about a straight route through that Sea of Azov on the screen right now. And that'll be very interesting because that is the one thing that President Putin does not want to give up, his coastline.
And when we talk about security guarantees, Andre, we're hearing a lot about that. What is best case scenario for Ukraine in that deal?
Well, in this deal, we still have to work that out. So what's important about this framework agreement today, and that's what I've been talking about on Ukrainian television all week. Same thing to the Americans. This is a framework agreement, which is the broad parameters of no side is going to come out on top here. This is a joint project, joint money coming in, joint money coming out, joint resources coming out, and that's where it stands right now. To be further delineated in a formal treaty, the kind that needs to be ratified by Ukraine's parliament. So that's a good backstop for Ukraine about not being taken advantage of, because whatever we finally come into agreement with in terms of hard numbers, that'll have to be ratified by the Ukrainian parliament, and that will include the security guarantee portion of it. So it'll be up to the United States to really put on the table what they're planning to agree to.
And final question, 3 years ago, was it part of Putin's desire as he invaded Ukraine was to have access to these areas with the rare minerals? Was that part of the equation then and now?
The part of the equation was simply to acquire territory. It's never been about the people. It's never been about anything but more territory that he believes for some reason that is his by birthright. But I would say, and to flip your question a little bit, I think part of the reason both sides, both Russia and the United States, both Russia and Ukraine have been talking to the United States about making new economic deals during this period, is Russia probably wanted to sell that same territory to or access to it to the United States. But as we all know, it's against international law to do that. And second of all, Ukraine was just quicker about it. Ukraine was quicker about getting on the ground with hard numbers about how to do a deal that makes sense for both sides. So here, Ukraine has, as it's done on the battlefield, outplayed our enemy.
Well, we'll see how things play out today in Washington, D.C. Andre, as always, thank you.
Thank you.